Tonight, it must have been a cold day in hell because Mr. Freeze is in not one, but two different Bat books. Constantine is really pushing the edge of what can be counted as a superhero, and Action Comics can only be explained by Grant Morrison. I do my best, though. All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 81 of the Not So New 52. I am your host and I got a lot of comics. I have so many comics I can't even begin to list them all off like I usually do, so check the description if you would like to find out. But just know, we got a new number one in the form of Constantine. We have the end of Grant Morrison's run on Action Comics in Action Comics 18. We have part of the event Wrath of the First Lantern in Green Lantern New Guardians. And beyond that, it's just a lot of stuff. There's a lot going on, which has made it a very, very long episode. So hope you enjoy that as I slowly break down over the course of it. Anyway, here's Constantine. Constantine number 1, written by Ray Fawkes and Jeff Lemire, art by Renato Guedes. So Constantine was previously part of the Vertigo line. He wrapped up his comic at issue like 400, I think, and then they immediately launched this in the DC universe. So we pick up with Constantine in New York and basically get some monologue about magic is basically used by people like me to cheat. Like, we use it in order to get things that we don't deserve, but no matter what, magic ends up having a cost and somebody's got to pay for it. And so we see him making his way back home. He's in New York instead of England for whatever reason. And waiting for him there is a guy named Chris, who apparently has been hearing voices. So he gets into a pet shop where he is living underneath that because apparently animals screw with divination magic or something like that. And he takes Chris downstairs and he's like, all right, I'll make it so you're not going to hear the voices anymore, but I need you to do something for me. So he pushes him up against a map on the wall as he's hearing these voices and having these visions, and he tells him, just mark the locations that come to you. And he says something about Croydon's compass and a needle burning. And as soon as he passes out, Constantine's like, all right, Croydon's compass is belonging to this ancient, not even ancient, I think it was like 100 years ago, but this sorcerer named Angus Croydon, who did a whole lot of sacrifice and cannibalism and stuff like that. And as such, he made a compass that can point to basically any magical item so that it could be collected by him. So it was broken up into 3 pieces, and now he has a map leading to all 3. So he hops on a plane with Chris, and he gets a drink from the flight attendant, and he remarks she's good. She's really good. However, she put poison in my drink, and I noticed it. So he rushes off to the bathroom as if he's been poisoned, and the flight attendant's like, oh, we got you. The cold flame has got you. And Constantine just grabs her, pulls her into the bathroom, and just like, I didn't drink it, you idiot. So at that point, she says a magic spell, bursts into flames, and Constantine just goes back to his seat as normal. And Chris is like, hey, can I have part of your drink? And he's like, no, that's not a good idea. So they land where the needle supposedly is, which is in Norway. And they make a joke about some Norwegian food smelling bad before they arrive at a hotel that is made completely out of ice. And he's like, yeah, this is got some magical properties or something like that. Either way, he makes his way into the chapel where there's a fire and some, altars and stuff like that. He breaks the altar, and inside is the needle that he's looking for. And at that point, Chris freaks out again, and he starts muttering something about Sargon is here. And Constantine's like, ah, crap, not Sargon. And we get the breakdown that the Cult of the Cold Flame was apparently a bunch of good magicians who got tempted by evil, more power and stuff like that. And they were Sargon, Tanarak, Mr. E, and Zatara, who I believe is Zatanna's father, but apparently he's an evil magician. So either way, Sargon, not a cool dude, and Constantine doesn't want to deal with that, so they're trying to get out of there. But it's too late, and this woman shows up saying that she is Sargon. And he's like, oh, hey, I recognize you. You're Sargon's daughter. I guess you took up the reins after he died. And she's like, yep, so you're going to give me that needle, or else I'm going to use this magic spell I cast to crush your little friend Chris here. And Chris is screaming out in pain, and he's like, you only got 5 seconds to save his life. I know you, Constantine. You're the hero type. You're not going to let him die. And Constantine's like, well, Chris, I did promise you weren't going to hear the voices anymore. And then he just bails, and Sargon is like, wow, all right, cool. So she ends up killing Chris and then starts storming through the hotel trying to find Constantine. She makes it outside and see Constantine has made a whole bunch of illusions of duplicate cabs that he's getting into. And so she starts blowing them all up one by one. But it turns out he never got in a cab at all. He was just over the ridge of snow nearby, and he's just walking his way back to the main road. And then he's like, it's like I said, no matter what, magic has a cost, and somebody's going to pay for it. Sorry, Chris. And that's it. Now he's off to find the other 2 parts of the compass, which are the lens and I think it was the dial? Something like that. But either way, 3 parts to the MacGuffin, and then we'll see what's up from there. This was fine. It was a fine enough first issue. You know, it's basically just setting up, hey, in case you don't know what Constantine is, what his whole deal is, he's a dick and he does magic. And that's all we're really getting from this. It's a necessary issue, but for somebody who has been reading things like Justice League Dark and iVampire this whole time, it feels very unnecessary because I know who Constantine is. I'm aware of his shtick. I didn't need a refresher course. So for me personally, a little bit weak, but I understand the necessity of it. Art-wise, looks fine, looks great. It's a little bit more stylistic than just house style, but not by much. It's pretty spot on with that. So yeah, overall, I got to give this one I give it like a 6.5. It's just an average issue, nothing stand out, nothing great, which might be bad for a first issue, but hey, at least it's trying something. Green Lantern New Guardians number 18, written by Tony Bedard, art by Hendry, Prasetya, Jim Calafiore, and Javier Pulido. So this is the next part of the Wrath of the First Lantern, and we're just going after the rest of the New Guardians. So we open up in Tehran, where Carol and Hal are both flying jets, and they're being chased down by some weird stingray-looking drone thing, and Hal's like, oh, geez, I don't know what these things are. Oh, get him off my tail. And Carol flies in, shoots him down, just like, what are you doing getting out of formation, Hal? Get back there. And we see them arrive back on a aircraft carrier, and they start shouting at each other like, oh, yeah, no, this is great, Jordan. You almost got blown up out there if I hadn't jumped in. And Hal's like, oh, I had it handled, blah, blah, blah. And some of the other crew are watching on, and they're like, those guys are so into each other. There is no doubt about that. And we see that as Carol storms away, this is all, of course, part of the First Lantern, just saying like, oh, see, I changed a moment in your past where you had to give up being a pilot in order to run your father's company and save it from bankruptcy. But in doing so, your father's company did go bankrupt, and they were bought out by Leviathan Defense Systems, which is where you're now employed in. So he's like, yep, all right. Anyway, I'm going to check back in with you. I want to go see how I'm working over on Larfleeze. And we see Larfleeze has been given back his family, and it's apparently his son's birthday. And he's passing a gift over to the son, and the son's like, oh, thanks, Daddy. But then Larfleeze refuses to let go of it. And he's like, I'm sorry, son, but this is mine. And he just pulls it back. And First Lantern's like, are you kidding me, man? Like, I gave you your family back, and you're still this greedy dick? Why? This is like the 100th thing I've tried. What is going to get you to stop being such a miserable piece of crap? You know what? All right, let's try something else. Let's do something else now. And then we cut over to Saint Walker, who apparently is not a Blue Lantern anymore, but is a Green Lantern for his sector. And he flies back to his home planet, and his family and his people are still alive. And he's just like, oh, everything's fantastic, and I love being in Green Lantern Corps. And then Ganthet shows up, going to Saint Walker. He's like, hey, Saint Walker, we got a big problem, and I came to get you personally because we need you to go take care of something else in your sector. And he's like, okay, why didn't you just call me on the phone? He's like, nah, I was in the area. Come on, let's go. And so he says goodbye to his, or at least he starts to say goodbye to his family. But then he's pulled away by Ganthet super quick. And as we see, all the other Guardians are in space around the planet, along with the Third Army. And this is just, hey, what if Third Army, but there was no Blue Lantern Corps? So back in Carol's dream, apparently they've got some mission from command. They're going to go target some missile base nearby. And Hal chimes up like, what happens if those stingrays show up again? And she starts laying into him like, well, I'm sure that we'll be able to handle it. Don't know about you, Jordan. And they start, arguing, bickering, whatever. And then all of a sudden the sirens start going off. They're being attacked. And it turns out that it is Atlanteans. The Atlantis is attacking this aircraft carrier, and they managed to somehow put it all together that the Leviathan defense systems that they were bought out by have also been, it's basically all Atlantis the whole way down. And that's why Iran also had Atlantis tech. That's what the drones were. They've been like double dealing to take down the surface world. So Carol says, okay, here's what's going to happen. You create a diversion. I'm going to get in a plane and get airborne, and then I'm going to take them out. And Hal's like, their systems are going to let them fire on their own tech. And it's like, yeah, that's why I'm just going to crash into them. So we cut back to St. Walker, and he's being pulled away by Ganthet. And he's like, okay, we need you to go over to this planet on the way far distant side of your sector. And he's like, I'm going to be gone for months if that's the case. I'm going back to say a proper goodbye to my family if I'm going that far. And he's like, nope, too much, too busy. He's like, no, nothing's too busy for family. So he goes back down to his planet, and he sees the Third Army is just destroying his people. And he's like, what in the? I was gone for 2 minutes. And hey, these things kind of seem like the Guardians. Uh-oh. So he sees his family being torn apart by the Third Army, being absorbed into them. And we see First Lantern behind him like, yes, you were so happy, and now you're in such despair. This is delicious. And St. Walker, he gets pissed off. He's like, no, I won't lose you. I refuse. And he says he's going to heal them and all will be well. And as he says all will be well, he transforms into a Blue Lantern and manages to heal his family. And First Lantern's like, okay, that wasn't supposed to happen. I admit I underestimated you. That's my bad. Though it did give me an idea. And so he goes to Larfleeze and gives him a life where he was a Blue Lantern instead of a orange one, because of something that happened way back in the old days where Hal Jordan was apparently a Blue Lantern at the time. And he's like, okay, see? So now you're more balanced and you don't have the Orange Lantern making you greedy anymore, right, Larfleeze? And he's like, get away. My emotions are mine. And he's like, oh my God, you're an idiot. That's literally, I literally cannot change you. You are stuck being this piece of crap no matter what life path there is. So whatever, I'm done. So then we cut over to Carol and Hal. Hal's getting a diversion. Carol jumps into one of the jets and goes and crashes it into the giant Atlantean craft. And she pulls out at the last moment, and her internal monologue is like, oh, I'd do anything for my unit, my people. I love them. And so that message of love causes her to become a Star Sapphire again. She remembers how things are supposed to be. And the First Lantern's like, oh my God, how do you people keep doing this? I thought I had a pretty good track record, but then you guys just keep on doing this crap. All right, maybe this is just because you were around that White Lantern for so long. Whatever. Either way, I'm done with you. So Carol manages to get away, and the ship is seemingly just erased from existence because First Lantern set it back so, and he's like, all right, I'm going to go ahead and try out Red Lanterns now. So that's where we're going next. Red Lanterns. It's fine. It's a good enough issue. I really don't dislike anything about it, but it is exactly what the last one was as well, and exactly what all of these issues have been, which is just like, hey, but what if? The only thing that this one adds to it, and I enjoy, is the fact that the New Guardians all overcome the First Lantern, and he doesn't manage to finally, like, in the end, get that extra one-up, where he's like, oh, but no, actually, I'm in control. He's just losing. These people are so who they are that they cannot be changed by the First Lantern. And I don't know, I kind of like that. I think it's a good bit of characterization. So, yeah, I got to give this one a... The three different art styles all suited each other, though I got to say the St. Walker one was the weakest. But I'll give it like a 7 overall. It's a good read. It's a fine read. Nothing amazing, fantastic, blowing me away, but it's the next part of the event, and it is delivering what it intended to. Batwoman number 18, written by W. Haden Blackman and J.H. Williams III, art by Trevor McCarthy. So last issue was like the big wrap-up of pretty much the series up to that point, but the big final reveal is Kate revealed herself as Batwoman to Maggie and asked Maggie to marry her. This issue only kind of deals with that. So we open up with a fight between Batwoman and Mr. Freeze and, what's her name, Firehawk, Flamehawk, whatever it is. Her cousin Bet is there as well. And we see that Bet is being informed by Kate's dad, whereas Kate is being told what to do by the DEO. And Kate's dad is basically like, hey, look, you're not super well skilled yet, Bet, so just rely on your cousin being there. And the DEO is led by Cameron, obviously. Cameron's like, dude, your cousin sucks. She is just a problem waiting to happen. So she ends up getting frozen, and Bet is trying to reason herself out, like, okay, I have fire powers. I could just use them and melt the ice. And Jacob is like, no, it's too dangerous. You can't do it, and you don't hurt yourself. And she's like, I'm going to do it anyway. So she manages to make her way out of the ice. It explodes outwards and ends up impaling the leg of Mr. Freeze. And she's like, hey, I mean, it worked, and I'm kind of not doing super great right now, but it worked. And so Batwoman comes up, and Mr. Freeze gets the ice shard in his leg kicked in a little bit deeper. And he's like, God, why are you guys even after me? I fought against Medusa, and I haven't done anything illegal since then. What is up, man? And Kate's just posturing like, oh, you're a criminal, Freeze, and no matter what, you would have eventually hurt some innocents and been a danger to Gotham. And it's like, all right, that seems like it's not the real reason. What's actually going on? She's like, nope, that's totally it. Anyway, I'm going to take your freeze gun for no particular reason and investigate it from here. But then, wouldn't you know it, Batman shows up, and Cameron's over the phone like, crap. I was really hoping he wouldn't get involved. And then Jacob over the line is like, Bet, this is really, really bad. Don't say anything. And so Batwoman and Batman just start kind of arguing with each other of how Mr. Freeze is Batman's turf. And Batwoman's like, no, this is my case. I got him first. I'm going to do the analyzing. And he's like, okay, well, I'm not going to let you take that freeze gun because I don't know if you're actually on the up and up. And she's like, I'm taking the freeze gun. And Bet tries to calm down the situation, but in the end, she just ends up smashing the freeze gun so nobody gets it. And you can hear Cameron over the microphone being like, what did you do? You suck. So then we see they left, and we see from the perspective of the camera that Batwoman had on her, it cut out in the middle of the fight. And so Cameron's explained to Bones, like, she is a loose cannon and we need to learn how to better control her. And Bones is agreeing entirely, and he brings in a man named Agent Asaph, who I guess is good at psych ops. And he basically tells him, look, we need to give her the illusion that she has control so she can make the choice to actually work with you. That's the only way this is going to work. Forcing her isn't going to do anything. So Bones says, all right, time to pull in the party crasher, whoever that may be. And Cameron protests, but he's like, nah, we're just going to see how far Batwoman's willing to go to protect her family. So then we get what I can only assume is a flashback, but it does nothing to indicate that it is, where Jacob is walking into his home calling for his wife, and her name is Catherine, and Catherine basically says, hey, I wasn't trying to snoop, I wasn't doing anything like that, I was just looking for the dog, but I ended up finding this superhero costume stuffed into the mattress liner of our daughter's bed. Are you like trying to make our daughters superheroes? And basically she's just calling him out of like, you're going to get them killed. We then cut to Maggie, who is actually investing in a new apartment. It's in the central city of Gotham. It has roof access. It has a whole lot of power supply. And the realtor's like, why do you need all this stuff? And Maggie's like, it's for my fiance. Works on computers and at night. So the realtor's like, oh yeah, no, I totally get it. You know, the police life can be hard. You don't need to explain it to me. And she's like, yeah, no, it's police that's hard. So then last page, we see Cameron is meeting up with whoever this mystery person is, still in silhouette, and the person says like, oh, hey, it's been 2 years and all I get is a hey from you. So don't know who it is. We'll see next issue. For me, honestly, this feels like just putting the pieces into where they need to be for the next arc, because obviously the last issue was the culmination of pretty much everything up until then. This feels like, okay, she's still working with the DEO, but we're taking a slightly different direction to it. Flamehawk, Firehawk, whatever her name is still in training. It's just moving into a different area of it, and I'm enjoying it. I think it's interesting enough, but it is definitely just the primer issue. It's not quite getting into the meat of it yet. So interested to see who this new silhouetted person will be. If that wasn't a flashback, I'm curious what that plot's going to be about. So yeah, overall, I'll give this one like I'll give it a 6.5. It's good, it's fine, it's just not standout great yet, and they thankfully have cut down on the number of plots they're juggling, but I still think they could handle like one less, just a little bit more focus, and I'd be all in on it. Birds of Prey number 18, written by Christy, Marx, art by Romano, Molenaar. I guess this is a new run entirely. This is written by Christy Marx, who's doing the Sword of Sorcery book right now, and I really enjoy that. So we have opening up with Mr. Freeze interrogating a Talon. And if you remember way back during the Court of Owl storyline, Mr. Freeze was actually betrayed by the court after they used some of his tech. So he's interrogating this Talon, just being like, hey, I can straight up kill you if you don't tell me what I need to know. And he's like, I'll never betray the court. And he's like, all right, then I'll kill you. So he does have a partner that we're not seeing here. But as Mr. Freeze walks away, he tells him, do whatever you want with him. And the guy just blows the Talon's brains out. So then we go to Black Canary's dojo, where the entire Birds of Prey are, which at this point is Black Canary, Batgirl, Starling, Condor, and Strix, the ex-Talon. And Batgirl's like, hey, thanks for letting Condor and Strix stay here. Strix because she's kind of a crazy monster, and Condor because he doesn't have anywhere else to go at the moment. And she's like, yeah, no big deal, but it's really only because you asked, Batgirl. Anybody else I wouldn't be cool with. And Strix and Condor are training, and Strix ends up throwing Condor into a giant mirror, shattering it. And Black Canary chews her out, just like, hey, you need to have some self-control. And Strix doesn't take kindly to that, considering Black Canary's had problems controlling her powers. So she starts lunging at Black Canary, going in for the kill pretty much. Batgirl gets her in a headlock, just being like, dude, what is wrong with you? And Strix hesitates for a second and then writes on the wall, hungry, which Condor's like, oh, okay, well, I know where the kitchen is. We'll go get some food. So then Batgirl has to go be in her own book. And Starling confronts Black Canary, being like, okay, now that everyone else is gone, maybe you can tell me what was going on with your powers? And she's like, nope, I don't know what you're talking about. And Starling's like, fair enough, don't call me until you have something to say. So then we get a 2-page mini story of Black Canary goes to a diner to clear her head. She has an old woman sit across from her who's 99 years old. And Canary asks the old woman, hey, in all of your life, have you ever met somebody that's beyond forgiveness? And the woman's like, you just got to forgive yourself first. And then we just go back to the dojo again, where Condor and Strix are cleaning up, and Batgirl and Starling come rushing into the room, and they're like, what is it? What's the emergency? And Canary's like, I don't know what you're talking about. It's like, you texted both of us saying that there was some crazy emergency. And she's like, no, I didn't. We've just been chilling here. And then all of a sudden the roof starts freezing, and wouldn't you know it, it's Mr. Freeze. And he's like, hi, I'm here to take that Talon because I've got a beef with Talons, so she's coming with me. And immediately Starling starts pulling out her guns. She gets her hands frozen solid. Black Canary also gets frozen. Batgirl has Condor, uses telekinetic abilities to throw the punching bag at Freeze, knocking him over a little bit. Canary uses her Canary Cry to get out of the ice, which she was unsure as to whether or not she should. But then at the very end, Mr. Freeze is like, all right, this is getting out of hand. I kind of just wanted to drop in, steal the town, and leave because I didn't think you'd be defending her so badly. So instead, we're going to do this. And he causes a huge, mist of fog to form. Nobody can see through it. And everyone's keeping an eye on Strix, and Strix is still there once the fog clears. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I guess he just left. Turns out, though, he kidnapped Starling and left a text on one of their phones saying, hey, you're going to send me the Talon. The Talon will know where it's supposed to be, at the place where she was born. You have 1 hour. And so now Canary's like, all right, we're going to get Starling. Let's go. So I think it's a solid start to at least a mini arc. I don't think it can unless the person working with Freeze is a really interesting character that is going to get his own focus. I can't see this really being a full arc, but I could see this just being a little 2-issue. Hey, all right, let's get introduced to things. Let's set up the new status quo under this new writer, how things are going to go. I'm interested. I think that it was well written and, more importantly, easy to follow, because that's always been the biggest issue I've had with this Birds of Prey book, is that they just throw a billion things and expect you to be like, oh yeah, you can connect the dots between the issues, instead of just telling me, here's what happened. Here's how a serial story is supposed to go. Part 1, 2, and 3, not parts 1, 3, 5, and 7. So, yeah, it's a fine issue, is what I'm trying to say. Art-wise, same, pretty much house style, maybe a little bit heavier on the arcs, or on the inks. So yeah, it's fine. I'll give it a 6.5. It's a good issue. It's not bad in any way, but it's also not doing anything super crazy amazing. The part that interests me the most, I would say, is Mr. Freeze going back on the Court of Owls. The fact that it's been a full year after the Court of Owls storyline, we're still dealing with that. That's crazy to me. So yeah, 6.5. Catwoman number 18, written by Nocenti, art by Rafa Sandoval. So, whatever happened last issue, I think her fence got arrested and then made a phone call to bust her out. This issue picks up where Batman is upset that Catwoman stole a bunch of art from the museum, and he apparently really liked that specific art for some reason. So he is gunning her down on a bike and does a pit maneuver to knock her over. Just saying oh, this isn't a game, Catwoman. This is important. You gotta bring back that art. And she's like, I'm not gonna. No, I stole them. They're mine now. I stole them for somebody who's paying me for them, and I guess he just wants to keep them private. And Batman basically, in full disclosure, this is a Requiem issue where it's supposedly him dealing with the loss of Damian, but it ain't, because all they talk about is the fact that Catwoman's like, oh, the Joker messed with my head, and I think he messed with yours too, but I think you sent the Joker after me. And Batman's like, why would I send the Joker? You're an idiot. And so they start fighting each other. He keeps telling Catwoman, do the right thing. And it looks like he's about to go full force right on her face, but then it turns out he's just beating the crap out of her motorcycle helmet to the point where he's getting bloody fists over it. And we see him mentally just being like, oh, I need my family back. But he doesn't say that out loud. He just says, put them back, please. And so Catwoman stops him from punching the helmet, just being like, okay, I get it. You're going through a rough time right now. It's just, I can deal with this. Everything's okay. So Batman takes a step back and he's just like, okay, sorry, I'll fix your helmet. And he punches it back into shape and he puts it back on her. But then apparently because it's a Cheshire Grin cat, he thinks it looks like the Joker. So she just throws it off and just being like, oh no, I don't want to look like him. So then for some reason, the guy who's been giving Catwoman jobs, including the Black Diamond job and the job that resulted in the Joker, he's been tracking Catwoman, and he sees her embracing Batman, and he's just like, oh, she doesn't need me. She's got him. And I don't even know where that came from. But then at that point, Batman's like, you and I can't be together. This will never work. Goodbye. And Catwoman's like, I don't even know anything about you. Like, I want to, though. It'd be cool. You can let me in. He's like, no, go away. So she drives off, and then we just get a completely separate issue here where Catwoman is all bruised up and banged up from the fight with Batman. She's like, I can use this to my advantage to figure out where Gwen is. So she fakes that she had been mugged and is making her way into the police station, and she's going to plant a camera in the detective who's after her. I think it's Alvarez, Detective Alvarez. So then we see Gwen is being interrogated by Alvarez. She has some kind of mob lawyer there with, and just being like, if you have any evidence on my client, present it now, or else we're letting her go, because you can't hold her without reasonable cause. And just be like, all right, fine, we'll show you the evidence. Go get the evidence. But then as they go and get the evidence, turns out it's missing. It's gone. So that's the power of whoever it is she called, which is, by the way, it's Emperor Penguin from Detective Comics at this point. I don't feel the need to bury the lead there. So he's freaking out over how Gwen's just going to be leaving, the only connection they have to Catwoman. But Gwen ends up getting stuffed into the car where all these guys are, and they're saying, okay, take Gwen to go see the boss. She's got to go pay the piper. So as she's leaving, Catwoman goes in, and she starts talking to that rat tail guy from, I think, an issue or two ago, and saying like, oh, hey, what do you know out on the streets? And basically they're just talking like, oh, yeah, you know, the Gotham Police is a gang of its own. It's blah, blah, blah. Who cares? But anyway, Rat Tail basically says, hey, if you ever feel unsafe, here's my card. I'll be your escort. So Catwoman gives her testimony to police. She starts crying, and she's like, oh, is there a box of tissues in that detective's office over there? I'm just going to grab one real quick. And she plants the camera, and that's that. And then we get Catwoman back to the original point of the story where she is taking the paintings back from the guy she stole them for, saying, these belong in a museum. And then Batman hears on the news that all of the paintings have been returned. And he's like, she did the right thing. Good for her. And then we get one last page of a guy named Joe Pazzo who works for Emperor Penguin. He's coming home from picking up groceries, and he just wants to be with his family, but for some reason he has horns growing out of his head. I have no idea why that's happening. Okay. I think that the Batman Catwoman stuff is good. I think it's fine. It'd be nice in its own little side story. The fact that we then had to make the detour over to the end, here's the story we were previously telling, for some reason makes me more upset. Like, I want to see the Batman Catwoman stuff more than I want to see this weird thing of, oh, Gwen was arrested and then Alvarez is on the case, but then Emperor Penguin's involved. It just seems like a story but without any substance to it. Like, we all know she's fine, she's out. And then it seems more like it's a tie-in to the Detective Comics story than it is its own thing, if that makes any sense. So, yeah, overall, I'll give it a 6. Its art is fine, and I do like the opening-ending bit where it's, hey, no, Batman is made happy because Catwoman did something for him. I'm good with that. That's a nice, solid little issue. Make it its own thing. Stop making this other story have to poke its head in. And also, why is Catwoman always in her underwear at least once per issue? It sounds like I'm complaining, and it's because I am. Because it doesn't make any sense in the context of the story. Sorry, that's just me. Nightwing number 18, written by Kyle Higgins, art by Juan Jose Rip. So last issue we introduced a new villain named the Dealer, who was selling off an item of Nightwing's dad's circus outfit that had Jokerized makeup on it. And also, nothing bad was going to happen to Damian. This issue, something bad happened to Damian. So this is a Requiem issue. And we're going through the exact same conversation where Damian's telling him, like, hey, look, things are bad, but they're going to be okay, Nightwing. Pull yourself together. And then, whoopsie, we're seeing Dick Grayson at Damian's grave. And it's just like, oh, I was there during the events of Batman Incorporated. I saw it happen. The Joker 2 weeks ago turned my life upside down, and now this happens. Like, I just need to move forward, I guess. I'll do my best. And we see 2 days later, he's just zoning out on the couch, recovering from all of his injuries, eating Chinese food, and he gets a voicemail from Sonia, who basically says, like, hey, I know you went through a lot because the Joker burned down Amusement Mile, and this is really hitting you hard, but, like, you can just call me. I'm here for you. I'm always here to listen whenever you need. And at that point, he gets a knock at the door. It's a package of a new video game, Swordwalkers, which he promised Damian he would buy so that they could play together. And as soon as he sees it, he gets so pissed off, he throws his phone against the wall and just be like, okay, I'm not doing so hot. So he goes out for coffee with Sonia and tries to make small talk about it. And she's just like, I guess I'm fine. Is everything cool? And he's like, I really don't want to be here and I don't want to talk right now. And Sonia's like, okay, here's the thing. Because of who my dad was, and Nightwing just jumps in, oh, you mean the guy who killed my parents? It's like, yeah, because of that, dick. So because of who my dad was, I was always emotionally pretty closed off, and I know how hard it is, but you're not like that. You're very open. You let people in, and that's a good thing, and you need to keep doing that because you do not want to go down the path that I went down. So at that point, he goes off on his own way. He gets back home, and Batman is waiting for him. Says, all right, get dressed. So they go out in their costumes, and Batman leads them to the Dealer, saying, like, hey, there's an auction going on in this building in the basement downstairs. They have an item that belonged to your dad. I just thought you'd want to know. And Nightwing's like, okay, what else aren't you telling me? He's just like, nothing. I'm not keeping anything from you. And Nightwing's like, yeah, okay, sure, you're not keeping anything. That's a first. So Batman goes off. And we see inside the Dealer's auction house where they're all wearing gas masks to protect their identity. And they bid on just a bunch of crap. One guy bids on a chainsaw that the Joker used for one of his things. And then they're like, all right, so now it's a tragedy within its own right, but now because of the Jokerization, it's even more worthwhile. And they unveil the costume, and as they're about to bid on it, power goes out, and Nightwing jumps in and just starts beating the crap out of everybody. But they do have guns and flamethrowers and such, so Nightwing is a little bit worse for wear throughout the fight. But as the fight's ongoing, the Dealer is basically saying, like, hey, if we kill him, who wants to bid on him? And everyone's like, oh, I'll take $20,000 for his hair, $30,000 for his ears. So at that point, Nightwing's like, oh my god, these guys are awful, Jesus. But he does manage to get the upper hand on the Dealer, and so the Dealer activates his final little extra thing, which is the Joker's jet fuel, which immediately starts engulfing the place in flames. And he's like, okay, well, everyone's running, and I'm going to go ahead and just grab my father's outfit and then make my way out. But it turns out that one of the rooms that these bidders were in is stuck shut, and they're all going to burn in there. And so he looks at the costume, looks back at them, and says, all right, get down. He busts down the window and saves all their lives. And he's had to leave the costume to burn, but he's like, you know what? I did the right thing there. I'm letting the past be the past, and I'm moving forward, doing the right thing. So he goes back to Damian's grave one more time, and he's like, you know, I know you'd be giving me crap about coming here talking to a grave, Damian, but, like, you were my brother in every sense of the word. I loved you, and I wish that I could have been there for you the way you were there for me. And he leaves the video game at Damian's grave. And then the final reveal here is Sonia and Dick meet back up. Dick explains that he lost somebody important to him, and Sonia's like, "Oh, I had no idea. I'm so sorry, but I need to tell you something." And she passes him a computer, and as it turns out, Tony Zuko, her father, the guy who he thought was dead for quite some time now, is still alive and has seemingly faked his death. And yeah, that's the hook for next time. I mean, that's a big thing. Bringing back this guy, especially as he's saying, "Oh, I'm going to move on. I'm not going to get stuck in the past anymore." To bring back the thing that caused all of his issues. Yeah, I'm interested. I really like it. I'd say the biggest critique of this issue, though, is just the art style. I'm not a huge fan of the way that faces look in this. A bit too like doll-like, I think, but it is a solid story being told. I like the emotional beats to it. It doesn't linger on emo Dick for long enough, or for too long, I should say. It does exactly what it needs to do. It hasn't moved forward again. No problems. So overall, I'm going to give this one I'm going to give it a 7.5, but I would have given it an 8 if the art style was just a little bit more up my alley. So take of that what you will. But no, good issue. Looking forward to seeing where this twist leads from here on. Red Hood and the Outlaws, number 18, written by Scott Lobdell, art by Tyler Kirkham. This is a real quick one. Last issue ended with Jason putting on his red hood, and it was modified by the Joker to basically poison him, gas him, I don't know. But either way, he is still unconscious, and he is dreaming of being in this horrible nightmare-looking realm that also is apparently where he did his training as with the All Cast, and his teacher Dukra is apparently there. But before Dukra is able to do anything, a giant demonic-looking Joker comes in being like, "Boy, kid, you are really obsessed with being alive. No matter how many times I try to kill you, you just keep on coming back." And we see, of course, this is all a dream. Inside of Wayne Manor, Alfred is medically looking after Jason and telling Bruce, "Hey, this kid needs to go to a doctor, like a hospital, now." And Bruce is like, "Nope, this is a family matter. Well, his best chances of surviving it are here and now." And he's like, "All right, well, at least bring in, like, Leslie Tompkins." And he's like, "Nope, not going to do it." And Alfred's like, "Okay, yeah, sure, whatever." And Jason's narrating all this, saying, like, "Alfred's awesome. I really like Alfred. He's always had my best interest at heart. Alfred's cool." So he gives Jason a little kiss on the forehead, being like, "Oh, make sure you wake up, and home is not the same without you, Jason." And he tells Bruce, like, "This is not your fault, and I hope you understand that." And he says, "If it wasn't for you, Jason would have been dead somewhere in an alley years ago. You're the one who gave him that extra chance." So Bruce just sits in an armchair. He's fallen asleep while Jason's recovering. We see flashbacks to their time together. And Bruce reminisces, and he's like, Jason, there was a time where I knew that you would be fine without me, that I could stop worrying about you." And we see it was during one of their sparring lessons when Bruce accidentally gave a swift kick to the face of Jason. And Jason's like, "Don't worry about it. I totally walked into it. All right, let's keep going." And Bruce is like, "Yeah, he's going to be fine." So we see inside the dream, Joker is swinging at Jason with a giant crowbar, and underneath of the table he was lying on is a stick of dynamite. So he takes it and shoves it down the Joker's throat and says, "Never again," and the Joker's head explodes. And then Jason looks over and sees Dukra, and he's just like, "Hey, thanks for the dynamite, I guess, if that was you." And he's just like, "Okay, well, you kind of blew up a lot of the place, Jason, which is not cool." And Jason's like, "That was me, that was him, that was all on him." And Dukra points out, like, "Look at your feet. You'll see all these dead bodies of your people in your family. You are lashing out at people who don't deserve it. How are you any different than the Joker?" And Jason summons 2 swords of the All Blades, and Dukra is like, "Hey, The only thing that you think separates you from the Joker is because you have like friends and people in your life who need you. But what happens when they leave? What happens when they're gone? What's going to keep you separate then? And we see an image of Roy and Starfire being hung up by nooses. And he's basically saying, like, Duker's telling him, look, they love you with all your hearts, but all you allow in return is hollow feelings. And he's like, no, that's not true. I do love them. And we see more dream logic of Jason in his Red Hood outfit shooting all of the Bat members who are coming after him. And as they're pulling him down, swallowing him whole, Batman comes in, grabs Jason, and pulls him out. And we see back in the real world, Jason is starting to stir. We see a moment from Batman Incorporated where Jason is now his wingman, and Batman's like, hey, it's time for you to come back home for good. Like, I'm letting you come back. And he's like, no, I'm not good enough. And he's like, oh, you were always good enough. I'm never upset that I took a chance on you. So back in the real world, Jason is waking up. He's about to apologize to Bruce, but Bruce just gives him a big hug and tells him to be quiet. So, okay. This is a Requiem issue. This is supposed to be dealing with the fallout of Damian dying, but I understand from a writing standpoint, there is actually no way they could have done that. Because last issue where he got gas bombed by the Joker, Damian was there. So he had to have been in this coma for like at least a week for all of the events of Batman Incorporated to take place. Even then, it doesn't make any sense. But regardless, it's there. It's at least they're trying to square the continuity circle. So what do I like about this issue? Art style, good. And the general emotional moral, good. The way that we got there via the dream logic and all these crazy images of that stuff, it's like, I don't know. I think you need to be a little bit stronger of a writer because the more metaphors are so just punching you in the face the whole time. It didn't quite feel as subtle as I think it needed to be. It's like, oh, Joker's in his dreams. I wonder what that signifies. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and give this one I got to give it like a 6. It's just, I like what it's going for, but the execution on it is so lacking that I can't give it anything higher than that. So a 6 for this. Wish it could have been better, but hey, I guess we got a little bit of better characterization of Bruce is okay with Jason now? Question mark? Action Comics number 18, written by Grant Morrison, art by Brad Walker and Rags Morales. This is the finale of Grant Morrison's whole run, and I'm only going to try to explain it as best I can. So last issue, Superman was going up against Super Doom, and Lex Luthor showed up. And this issue picks up immediately in that place where Lex is just trying to fight back against Super Doom in one of his mech suits, saying, no one kills Superman but me. And all the narration is saying, like, this is it. This is where the new American mythology comes from. These super gods. Because that's what Grant Morrison's whole deal is. And so it gives Superman enough time. He gets over to Crypto and sees that Crypto is currently all chained up in the kryptonite chains. And then Super Doom tears open Lex's suit, sees that Lex isn't actually in there, it's a hologram, and Lex is actually back in his cell. And he's like, well, Superman, I hope that gave you enough time. So Superman lands one solid punch on Super Doom's face, knocks him down. But then Super Doom just responds by batting him out of the air and throwing him over to the anti-Superman club team, whatever you want to call it. And the woman who has red kryptonite as her power starts causing Superman to hallucinate. And he's basically hallucinating Vinny, just being like, you can't possibly beat me. I'm so much smarter than Mxyzptlk. Like, I'm incredibly intelligent. And he's basically just trying to override his will. Then we cut over to the hospital where Lois and Jimmy are with Mixie, who just woke up, along with the Legion of Superheroes in there. One of the nurses is like, you can't be in here. And Sandoval just says, piss off. And so she leaves. And then they start talking to Mixie like, okay, how do we help Superman? What do we do? And at that point, one of Mixie's sons comes into the room and says, hey, you've been a bad dad to me all this time. My mom's bloodstains are on this Superman shirt because of you. And Mixie's like, you idiot. I taught your mom how to use her blood to hide in the second dimension. And then Saturn Girl realizes that the sun is actually just another hand of Vinny that's been damaged over time. So at that point, Mixie starts seizing up, and they go to get a crash cart, and Lightning Lad's like, nah, screw it, I'm just going to do it here. So he zaps him back into good shape, and it's basically like, all right, tell us what we need to know. How do we prevent Superman's death? And he says that the trick is to make sure that Vinny gets the trick. And then the Legion posits like, okay, what if we take a time bubble through the fourth dimension and slam it into this fifth dimensional being's face? Would that work? I don't think they ever actually do that, but they're talking about it. So anyway, Super Doom and Superman are still fighting while Superman is still hallucinating. And during the fight, Susie, Lois Lane's niece, I think, shows up along with the dude who, like, kidnapped her because she's one of the Neo-Sapiens. And apparently he's got his own team called the Cometeers. And they show up and basically just, over the course of 2 pages, take care of the entire anti-Superman team and get the kryptonite chains off of Krypto. So at that point, they're like, all right, we did what we could do. It's up to Superman now. He has to be the one that deals with it, with Super Doom specifically. So then we see that everyone is, all the pieces are coming into place here, and they are arresting Mixie's son, despite the fact that he's not consciously aware of anything. So Super Doom picks up Superman, and he's like, you don't get it. In your perspective, this is the only attack you've ever fired at me. But by my perspective, you've attacked me dozens of times, and I've beaten it back every single time. You've just kept on losing over and over again. And this time will be no different. And so he calls to everybody who's apparently mind-linked at this point and says, if everyone says their names backwards, then it'll cause some sort of 5-dimensional ripple, and it will cause Super Doom and Vinny to lose. So everyone who's mind connected does it, and that ends up with Super Doom turning to stone, and then his armor, because he is in armor, starts a self-destruct sequence called Doomsday Mode. And so Clark picks up the whole thing and flies it out into deep space. And we see that as it explodes beyond the moon, we cut back to the fifth dimension, and Vinny is still, he just finished trying to kill Mixie, but accidentally killed the king of the fifth dimension. And he's like, oh, this is all a trick. Mixie's the one who caused all of this to happen. And so Vinny is locked away. Mixie becomes king, and we just get like a happily ever after page where Mixie says like, oh, he found the love of his life. However, his wife died in labor, giving birth to, I believe it's 3 children. 2 of them were sons that he can't bother to look at, but he does keep his daughter by his side and names her after her mother. And that's that. And it turns out that all of that story of the fifth dimension was actually a bedtime story being told by Kal-El's mom back on Krypton as Jor-El comes into the room and basically is about to say like, hey, Krypton's not doing so hot. So then we cut back to Madam Nixley, the landlord of Superman, who says, hey, you saved the fifth dimension, and technically like we're at a different point in time. I still have my one wish, but it has to be used on something red. We can try to phrase that in a way that's going to give you back your life. What do you want, Superman? And he's like, look, I made a promise to a little kid on Mars that I'd save them, so that's my wish. So we see that the Mars colony actually didn't end up dying. They were saved by Superman, but then he just disappeared for 24 hours and no one was sure where he is. We see Lois and Jimmy still in the rubble trying to take pictures and get a story on that. And then they realize, wait a minute, during that part where everyone was saying their names backwards, I swear I heard Clark Kent backwards, but he wasn't around, so where was he? And so she calls up Clark, thinking, well, maybe he's Superman. And then we see Clark answer the phone saying like, oh yeah, no, I'm fine. I just got into a little bit of a brawl, as we see Superman like come down out of the sky in the background. So it's a lot. It's a whole lot. What do I think of it? I think it is a massive story that is peak Grant Morrison. I think that this is so goddamn confusing to read month to month. I think reading it week to week would be confusing. But I do appreciate the scope of it. It feels like it was well thought out, but it is just, it's dense, man. You really got to know what you're getting into if you have any hope of doing this, because this is not something that's New 52. This feels like something where you need to read pretty much all of Superman comics in order to fully understand the scope of what's happening here. So I'm going to give this one, while I appreciate what it's doing, it does still dock points because it is just so confusing on a month-to-month comic basis. I'm going to give this one a 7.5. I think that it's good, and as for Grant Morrison's whole runs, it had its highs, it had its lows. I think that this is pretty much middling, where this was what he was building to the whole time, and it's confusing as hell, but at least it's a Grant Morrison story. Supergirl number 18, written by Frank Hanna, art by Robson Roca. Last issue was Hell on Earth, both metaphorically and physically. So this one is basically a brand new story, but the only thing you need to remember is that Kara got kryptonite poisoning from her fight with Hell. So we pick up on Lex Luthor, who's just enjoying yard time because I guess he's in prison and they let him just lounge about with guns trained on him and like a super cannon as well. And there's this warden there who's like, oh, make a move, Luthor. I dare you. I double dare you. I want to shoot you so bad. But he's just chilling out in a chair right in the middle of the yard. And we see that he's not actually chilling, but he's hooked up some sort of biomechanical thing that allows him to have a meeting with some sort of team inside of his brain. And he's like, okay, Hell on Earth happened, team. That much is crazy. We're still trying to figure out what all is going on here. But hey, did anybody notice during that fight that there is a Supergirl? And so he zooms in on that and is like, well, this is interesting. She looks like she's been poisoned. So then we cut to Kara, I think 2 weeks later, where she has basically been held in a space station that is orbiting the sun, and it's called the Proxima 1, and it's run by Dr. Veritas. And she's like, hey, we sent you up there to try to just purge all the kryptonite from your body, and yeah, you're like super powered right now, but your powers are still a little bit on the fritz, and you need to be aware of that. And Supergirl's like, I don't feel like I'm on the fritz, I feel like I'm fine. And she's like, okay, well, I know for a fact your powers are still a little on the fritz, so take it easy. Stay up here for a while, and then we'll let you go down. And she's like, nah, I feel great. Teleport me down. She's like, all right, well, I'm not in the business of trying to kidnap super people, so I'll teleport you down in no time. And we see Luthor is talking with some of his mental things. One of them has, like, Brainiac parts on them, so just that might be a thing. But either way, Supergirl teleports out from the Proxima 1 where they had her tracked to, before they can trace her anywhere else. And it's like, all right, well, nope, she may be gone, but we'll find her eventually now that we know she exists. So then, down in the block, somewhere near the center of the Earth, Supergirl teleports in, and she just, like, bursts her way out through the teleport room, slams a bunch of robots away, and then just flies out, because she is nowhere near willing to deal with this. Cut to Star Enterprises, where Karen Starr, a.k.a. Power Girl from Earth 2, is watching on the news the fight between Supergirl and Hell, and she's like, wait a minute, that girl looks really familiar, and also, I suddenly feel really sick. What is going on here? Go back to Supergirl, she's flying through the center of the Earth trying to get out, and then all of a sudden her powers go on the fritz and she crashes into some lava. And then there is a woman who pops out of the lava who says, boy, oh boy, I hate you Kryptonians. And it turns out this woman was from Superboy number 3, where she showed up with just as little information, and she was threatening Superboy. So this lava woman's just trying to kill Supergirl because Krypton did some bad stuff to whatever planet she came from. And Supergirl's like, yeah, I don't really want to deal with this. So she grabs hold of the lava lady, flies her up out of the center of the planet into space, and then her powers conk out again, so she ends up passing out. They then proceed to crash back down under Earth, and we see the narration here is between Lex Luthor and one of his minions named Alfina, and it's like, oh, how did you know we would find her again so quickly, Mr. Luthor? And he's like, it's maths, standard deviations and whatnot. And we see the lava girl is still okay. She managed to survive, but she just melts back down into the core. But in the meantime, some military people have shown up, run by General Garrison, and they're like, oh, contain the Supergirl. General Garrison wants her contained. So Supergirl has been taken by the military, and then back at Star Enterprises, Karen Starr passes out in the middle of a presentation, and she's like, what in the world is happening to me? Okay. It's a different writer. It's a different direction. I'm not opposed to it. It sounds like it's got an interesting thing at least. But I do think this is one of those things where there should be just a little bit more explanation to it because, A, pulling that lava girl literally out of your ass, and by ass I mean Superboy number 3, is a deep pull. And the fact that the only little editor's note they gave is like, check out Superboy number 3. It's like, no, you need more than that. You're just pulling this out of nowhere, and it just so happens to be, yeah, whatever. So I'm at least interested in the direction that we're finally going to get the Supergirl Power Girl crossover. I think that that's been a long time coming. That being said, this issue felt a little bit too full. We got Lex Luthor, we got Dr. Veritas, we got Karen Starr, we got Lava Lady, we got some army group coming after Supergirl. There's a lot. I think we could have trimmed this down by like 2 or 3 different characters and just let it be what it is. On top of that, you got Lex Luthor's... You remember Spy Kids 3D? Where Sylvester Stallone had like a little thing of himself in his head that he talked to? It felt like that. Like there were 3 of them. One of them was like a hulking brute. One of them was Brainiac, weird stuff. And then one of them was just like a ball of light. So, yeah. Don't ever compare yourself to Spy Kids 3D, Supergirl. Anyway, I'm going to give this one a... I gotta say 6.5. I really want to give it the 7, but it hasn't earned it. It's close, but no cigar. And on top of that, I feel that the Power Girl artwork in specific is, I don't know, there's something different about it and just doesn't seem to suit her. So, yeah, 6.5. DC Universe Presents number 18, written by Joe Keatinge, art by Federico Dell'Accio. So this is Starfire focused. It is this very brief one, honestly. And the only thing you really need to know going into it is that Starfire was captured and enslaved as a child. And this just kind of deals with that, where we open up on this building in the middle of a space station, and apparently the space station is, as we find out later, multiple times the size of Earth. And we see a whole bunch of aliens going flying through windows. And we see inside is Starfire wearing some like knight's armor. And she's got one of the aliens by the jaw. And a young girl next to her. And the girl's name is Denica. And Starfire's like, okay, I've killed the rest of them. I'm going to kill you as well. I was going to kill you as well, but do you understand why you're alive now? And the guy's like, yo, I'm not going to do whatever you want me to do. And he gets punched and basically yells at her saying, like, you're never going to find your freedom. You're going to live enslaved no matter what. Nothing you can do can change that. And Starfire takes out a sword and just stabs the guy through the head. And Denica's like, that seemed like it wasn't necessary. And Starfire's like, they're never going to change. They're never going to learn. You got to figure that out now, Denica. And we see what happened was Starfire was fighting these aliens. Turns out they are the same aliens that enslaved her as a child. She allowed herself to be enslaved again, and she just kind of kept her cool, didn't say anything until she was on their main ship flying through deep space, and then she escaped and is now going to just straight up murder everyone. We then meet Danica's brother, uncle, father, hard to say. His name is Dasim, and he does not like Starfire because she keeps on, disturbing the peace and making it so that these guys are going to bring more trouble to their little village they've built up in this spaceship. And Starfire's like, hey, I'm going to free you guys. Like, that's the end of this. I'm going to make sure you guys are free. And Dasim's like, no, you're just going to make things worse. Stop trying to help. And so at that point, Starfire goes in and goes to talk to the local elders or whatever there is. Apparently, Dasim has been their number one guy, in the best way to describe it. He's been the guy who's, been the person who defends them from other tribes nearby and whatnot. Not the people that has enslaved them into this ship, but like, this place is bigger than Earth multiple times over. There's a bunch of different tribes and whatnot. And Starfire basically came in and said, I'm going to free all you guys, and I'm going to use violence to do it, which Dasim has never been willing to do. So then Dasim went and talked to the council at some point in the middle and said, like, hey, Starfire, she's bringing a lot of grief down on us. Like, she needs to go. And they're like, okay, look, if you want to do it, by all means, you can do it. But we think she should stay. And at that point, Dasim's like, no, I have to protect our tribe. So we see Starfire sitting on a hill looking down at the village. Dasim comes up with a sword. And he's like, the elders have decided you need to leave. And Starfire's like, I think you may have decided that because the elders told me it's you. Like, do you really think they don't tell me when you go crazy like this? And so Starfire brings her own sword up to Dasim's neck. And she's basically like, look, I'm going to protect your people because that's something you failed to do. You've let these enslavers just do whatever they want. That's not good enough. I'm going to actually protect your people, and I'm going to use violence to do it. And so she walks away. Dasim looks like he understands, but then he launches a surprise attack on Starfire and basically says, like, you've made our lives so much worse. And it sounds like he's just talking about himself, like, oh, everything was fine before you showed up. And Starfire's just like, hey, I'm here to offer freedom. And he just says, no, you're here for death. That's what all it is. But then Starfire chops off his hands and says, okay, I'm letting you live, but you need to promise you're going to get out of my way. Got it? And he's just like, I'm kind of in shock right now. So at least some time passes. The slavers arrive in their giant helicopter ship things, whatever, and they're looking for Starfire. And Starfire has her powers. Like, she's been able to use it the whole time. She just chose not to out of respect for this village's sword-using ways. So she just flies up to the ship and immediately starts blasting and kills everybody on board. And now that the ship is completely open and able to be stolen, basically she comes down and is like, hey, who wants to go? I'm ready to take you all out. Let's go. We can hop on the ship. We can fly away. And she glares at Dasim, but Dasim's like, I didn't call them. I'm not the one who told them you were here. And Danica steps forward and is just like, I did. I told them you were here. You cut off my relative's hands. You cut off Dasim's hands. You scare me. You scare everyone here. You're not making things better. Just please don't cut off my arms. And Starfire's like, oh, I might have gone a bit far on the whole violence thing. Okay, I can take anybody who wants to go with me, anybody at all. And they're just like, no, get out of here. We can save ourselves. We don't need you. And she offers one last time to Danica, but Danica's like, no, get out of here. I don't want to see you anymore. So Starfire flies away on her own. One of the slavers realizes this and says, hey, Starfire got out. Boss, is this cool? Are you all right with this? And he's like, oh, no, I'm not all right with this, but we will be sure to get her back. And we see that the man on the other side of the line saying, I'm building an army, wartime is upon us, is Fang Fang, who, if you don't know, was the dude from the last issue with Arsenal. Apparently now he's a space alien guy, and he has a hostage in the form of the dude from the last issue. I didn't expect these two to be linked up at all. And then in the last page, we just suddenly get the, like, no, Fang Fang is the one who is capturing Starfire for real. And he's saying war is upon us. I don't know if this is going to come up anywhere. Doesn't seem like it will. But all in all, it's an okay little story. It's a cool thing of, if you use violence on the level of your enemies, then people are going to view you the same as the enemies. And I like that as a moral, but there is a little bit of a moral high ground in Starfire's of offering freedom rather than being enslaved, so it falls a little flat there. Overall, art's fine, writing is okay, not standout, a little bit of weirdness sometimes, but I gotta give it I'll give it a 6. It feels like a nice solid 6. It's not awful by any means, but I could easily have skipped over this and I would not feel like I was missing any little bit of the universe. I don't think this is ever going to come back, and I am hopeful that I'll eat my words there, but yeah, I doubt it. Justice League number 18, written by Jeff Johns, art by Jesus Saiz. So last issue was the end of Throne of Atlantis, and the Justice League was like, hey, we need to make our team bigger. We need to hire some new people. So this issue is basically just dealing with that. And we open up in Pittsburgh High, where Ronnie Raymond and Jason, I forget his last name, are studying, trying to write a paper to get into some like good college or something like that, or at least have Ronnie get into a college, because Jason is basically banking on them being able to go to the same college so they could stay Firestorm. But it turns out Ronnie's just kind of zoning out, listening to music and whatnot, so he's not 100% there. But then the computer screen that they're working on flashes up with "We can help you, Jason," and the music inside of Ronnie's ears flips over to "We can help you too, Ronnie, if you can help us." So then we cut to Baltimore, where Black Canary is fighting some sort of snake man, probably Copperhead. And all of a sudden, this billboard that she's fighting in front of flashes over to the words, "Hello, Black Canary," as she takes out Copperhead. And then we cut over to San Francisco, where Zatanna is putting on a show. And as she gets off stage and back to her dressing room, she gets a call from Constantine saying, like, oh, I'm so mad at you, the Justice League Dark, blah, blah, blah. And then her phone gets a text that says, hang up on him, Zatanna. We have a place for you. And Zatanna's like, oh, sweet, cool. So then we cut to the Watchtower, where the 6 members of the Justice League, because Green Lantern isn't there, are basically saying, like, yeah, we're going to need some more chairs if we're going to do this. And they're basically just talking like, look, Cyborg, he is constantly absorbing data. He usually ignores most of it, but there's a couple of buzzwords that him and Batman set up that he can't ignore, that like triggers him to check out. And they're things relating to other superpowered individuals. And he has set up a map, and he calls it the grid, that pinpoints all of these superpowered people so that they can basically be contacted and brought into this fight. Meanwhile, Aquaman, just briefly, his attention is split because he's like, I kind of got some Atlantean stuff going on, and I should call down and make sure everything's going cool with that. So basically they're saying, all right, how do we decide who gets in on the Justice League? And they don't really have a good answer because Cyborg tries not to invade into their personal lives. So Flash is like, well, let's just bring them up here and have kind of like a job fair. We'll see who's a good fit. So we see 10 people brought up. Black Canary, Black Lightning, Blue Devil, Element Woman, Firestorm, Gold Rush, Nightwing, Platinum, Vixen, and Zatanna. And everyone's just kind of having a powwow, talking to each other, getting to know each other. We see Platinum going around, shaking hands with everybody, and she says the same thing over and over, like, hi, I'm Platinum. I'm part of the U.S. military and used to go into situations that are dangerous to normal humans. And everyone's like, cool, what else? And then she just walks off and talks to someone else. And it's like, okay, well, she's got a personality. Zatanna apparently is on the case of her father's murder. And she's like, hey, Superman, really appreciative you brought me up here. I got to go deal with that, so I'm not going to be in this book anymore. And Superman's like, no problem. So long. Black Lightning and Blue Devil are talking about joining the team. Blue Devil doesn't think he's cut out for it. Or sorry, Blue Devil doesn't think they want him there. Black Lightning thinks that they would do a much better job just down on Earth with small street level stuff. Nightwing goes up to Batman and just like, I thought this was an emergency. And he's like, I mean, could you not be a dick? And he's like, that's literally my name, so no. And then Superman hears an extremely faint heartbeat, a very tiny one. And we see this itty bitty little figure in shadow. And then we go over to Platinum talking to Gold Rush. And Gold Rush is also a metal body. She's apparently from Texas. And he's like, hi, I'm Platinum. Are you also a robot? And she's like, no, I'm a person. This is just a gold body. And she starts really hitting on Flash, saying like, oh, it's a hard candy shell, but I've got a sweet center. Y'all ever been married, Flash? And Flash just runs over behind Superman, just being like, we need to get rid of her. She is making me uncomfortable. So Element Woman starts talking to Firestorm, being like, oh man, wouldn't it be so cool to join the Justice League? This is great. It's a dream of mine. But like, Rex is right. I'm not really so good at impressing people. And as Platinum comes over to shake Firestorm's hand, she suddenly starts freaking out and starts saying how she doesn't want to be a soldier, and she starts attacking everybody there. So Vixen uses her power to try to restrain Platinum. It doesn't seem to work. Platinum's got a hand up on him. And so Cyborg calls down to Platinum's creator, Dr. Magnus, and he's like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have pushed her out the door so fast. I really was just hoping she would be able to make it. Could you please, like, you have to disable her, which is really difficult because her body is just pure platinum, but inside of her is like her brain. If you destroy her brain, I cannot fix her and I'll never be able to replace her. So please don't break that. And they're like, okay, ideas, suggestions. And Cyborg calls up Firestorm and says, hey, I need you to change her body, which is pure platinum, into water. Are you specific enough to do that and not mess with her brain? And Ronnie's like, of course I am. Jason, we are that good, right? Yeah, no, of course we are. So Platinum's just saying how she wants to go back to Dr. Magnus. She just wants to go home. And Firestorm uses his powers to turn her into water. And it looks like her brain's about to hit the ground and just crack open. But then it turns out that a faint little heartbeat belonged to the Atom, who is another person who was contacted named Rhonda Pineda. And Cyborg's like, yeah, she, during the attack from Atlantis, disabled one of their bombs. And I managed to trace it down to her. I found her in a college, and I contacted her asking if she wanted to come up. But I never got a response back, so I didn't think she was here. But I guess she was here the whole time. So they narrowed it down. They want Atom, Element Woman, and Firestorm all on the team. They figure those are the new recruits. But all of a sudden, Cyborg's computer glitches out, and as he tries to get up there, it's like, whoa, somebody hacked into our computer, stole our entire history of the Justice League, and sent it to someone. And it looks like they left a message for us, and we see a skull and crossbones pop up on the screen with the words, have a nice day. So I think that's where the primary arc is going to be, of whatever this computer virus is. So yeah, new members on the team. I'm interested. Element Woman is a bit weird because I don't think we actually have met Metamorpho in any of the books we've done. So having Element Woman before the main guy seems a little strange. But hey, it's what we're doing, and it's nice to see Firestorm is getting written in a competent manner. So yeah, overall, I'm going to give this one, I'll give it a solid 8. It's a nice little, just all the characters, you bring them in, it establishes why they would or would not be in favor of joining the team. The only one I think got a little bit short-shafted here is Vixen, but, you know, whatever. She was already on a Justice League, so she can have that one whenever it comes back. But yeah, 8 for this. I'm looking forward to the next couple issues and seeing where it turns out from here. Justice League of America number 2, written by Jeff Johns, art by David Finch. Last issue left off with the team being picked out, and Green Arrow said something about the secret society and then died. So this issue picks up with Scarecrow. He wakes up in a dark room, and he's just asking around, and all of a sudden this dude steps out, and he looks a little bit like Joker, but he's older and not smiling, and he's basically saying, hey, do you remember me breaking you out of Arkham? And Scarecrow's like, yep. And he's like, cool. I'm going to continue to do whatever it takes to keep you out of harm's way. In return, when I ask of you to do something, I expect you to do it no questions asked. Scarecrow's like, okay, and what if I say no? And the dude just pulls out a gun and aims it at Scarecrow's head. And he's like, well, then I'll kill you. Like, I'll just do that now. Do we have an agreement? And then he proceeds to break down Scarecrow, saying, like, here's the thing. You like to inflict fear on people, but that's only because the fear gas doesn't work on you anymore, and Batman is the only thing that scares you anymore. You want Batman to scare you. You like fear. I'm going to give you something to be truly terrified about if you agree to help with me. And Scarecrow's like, I'm interested. So then we cut to Green Arrow going into surgery after mentioning the whole secret society thing. And Amanda Waller's like, it's perfect. Sounds to me like Justice League of America has their first mission. And Trevor's like, can we maybe wait until we get a tiny bit more information as to what in the hell we're walking into? And Waller just tells him, no, I'm the one making the shots here, and I think this is the perfect thing to do trial by fire. And Trevor tears her down, saying, like, you used to care about your fellow soldiers, and then you became the man. And Waller's like, you're right, I am the man. And as the man, I expect you to follow orders. Do you understand, Colonel? And Trevor's like, whatever. Psh, fine. So then we cut to a conference room where, everyone's got their chairs around the table with their logos on them, and Vibe's the first one there. He got there half an hour early. He's on the phone with his brother saying, like, oh, man, I hope that they like me around here. And he's like, I don't know, man, showing up half an hour early. It's kind of desperate seeming. And he's like, geez. So then Stargirl walks in, and she's like, hi, I'm Stargirl. Who are you? Oh, I'm Vibe. Oh, is this your first time in D.C.? It's so nice here. I was helping out with hurricane relief. And I swear to God, she's still wearing braces. So then we go to Martian Manhunter and Katana who walk in. And Manhunter's like, you can call me Jean. My friends call me Jean. And Katana's just like, oh, I don't think any of us are friends, but I will cut up anybody who attacks my teammates. John's like, fair enough. So they look at the logos on the chairs and they see two they don't recognize. One of them is Green Lantern, but they're like, we have a Green Lantern on our team? Where is he? I want to meet him. And then the other one, they're like, is this Captain Atom? Like, what's the C mean? And it turns out it's Catwoman who sits down. And they're like, Catwoman, you're kind of a villain. What are you doing here? And she's like, oh, didn't you hear? I'm a hero now. And then Hawkman's mace just slams down on the table. And he sits down covered in blood next to Vibe. And Vibe's like, oh, hey, Hawkman, you all right? He's like, yeah, why? You're covered in blood. He's like, it's not mine. And Vibe just slowly scoots away. Love it. Perfect page. So at that point, Trevor walks in, tells Hawkman to clean up because they're going to be on a press conference. The president is going to introduce them as the Justice League of America, and Stargirl's going to give the speech. And then Stargirl's like, why me? And it's like, you're photogenic and everyone likes you. Catwoman, you will not be there because you're still technically a villain. She's like, fair enough. I'm also photogenic, though, as she pushes out her chest. And they're like, should we wait for Green Lantern? It's like, Green Lantern's busy in the other Jeff Johns book. He'll be back as soon as he's done there. And so they all make their way out and tell Catwoman to stay out of trouble, to which Catwoman then immediately starts kissing Steve Trevor, and he just pushes her off, and it's like, don't you ever do that again. And then he leaves with the group. Turns out Catwoman just did it, though, to steal his wallet, and she sees a picture of Wonder Woman, which reminds her of how she has an on-again, off-again thing with Batman. So then we cut to the mansion of that guy, who I'm just going to assume is the leader of the Secret Society until otherwise proven, and he's listening to the speech that Stargirl's giving with Obama. And he's like, hey, Ivo, did you get our intruder? Did you pick him up? And it's like, no, the Green Arrow was picked up by Argus. I figured it was better not to be seen by them. And he's like, well, you were wrong, Ivo. We need you to do that. So then we see Green Arrow still in his bed, unconscious. Martian Manhunter and Steve Trevor in the room, and Trevor's like, hey, go in his brain and find out what he knows about the Secret Society so we're not walking into a literal trap. And so he breaks in and gets the basic information as much as he can, where he got in, he posed as a criminal, someone was looking for an impossible job, so he tried to get on their radar, and he did, but they knew he was a hero in disguise, so they tied him up and said, congratulations, you found us. And then Green Arrow managed to escape via an arrowhead up his sleeve. And as he left, he was attacked by what seems to be a robotic Batman. And there's also a robotic Superman and Wonder Woman. But all the John can see is that it is the Trinity. So Trevor's like, crap, Batman was there. Oh, we're going to die. We're all going to die. But whatever, let's go. So Green Arrow then wakes up as he says, get the team together. And he's like, hey, Green Arrow, me and you, we were working on this together. You did a super good job. Need you to rest up. I got a Justice League now. You're not on it. And Green Arrow's like, what? I want to be on the job. You know that's a dream of mine. And he's like, yeah, well, Waller's calling the shots. And Arrow's like, did you tell her that she's the man? And it's like, yeah, I said exactly that. She's the man. She sucks, right? And then Green Arrow's like, you're the man too, Trevor. You're the one calling the shots. You're not a rebel anymore. And Trevor's like, but I was a rebel. So they go out in the field to where Green Arrow was picked up from, and everyone's just kind of arguing as to the best way to handle this. Hawkman just kind of wants to knock down all the forest and see what's left. But then one by one, they start realizing that their members are missing. Katana just disappears, and John is unable to find her mentally. And then Catwoman, same thing, just poof, gone. So they're like, okay, everyone regroup. We got some issues. But before he can say anything else, Trevor gets a lasso around his neck. And we see that the robotic trinity of Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman are all there. And they tell what's remaining of the Justice League, you shouldn't have come here. So overall, I do enjoy this issue. I think that it's very fast-paced. I would have preferred this issue just be the meeting of the team rather than them jumping right in onto their first mission. I think that ending on the speech, while they had the entire issue being inside the press conference room, would have just been great. I would have loved that, because that page with Hawkman and Vibe was just perfection. Perfect pacing, great humor, loved it. So I just wanted that for a whole issue. That being said, what they did was not bad. It just seems like they have to get to a certain point very quickly, and they're moving as fast as they can. And it's not letting me just kind of bask in the, okay, we have a new team. We're building up this team. Instead, it's nope, they're already in, let's go. So overall, I'll give this one I'll give it a 7.5. It's still very good, but I do think that if they had just slowed it down, this could have easily been a all-timer issue of just this good humor, all these people getting together from different walks of life and how they are interacting with each other. But as it was, like I said, 7.5. Justice League of America's Vibe, written by Andrew Kreisberg and Jeff Johns, art by Pete Woods and Andre Guinaldo. So last issue was just kind of the setup to getting Cisco on the team, and then this issue is pretty much first adventure. So we see in Michigan, portal opens up, Breacher comes through, and seems to be a generally creepy-looking Predator-esque alien, but we don't actually see him attack this homeless man here, which is important later. So then we cut to Cisco talking to his brother Dante, and basically Dante's saying, like, here's the thing, I think that you're included on this team as, like, the meat puppet. Like, they're just going to push you to the front lines, you'll get knocked aside, and that'll give them enough time to get their act together. And he's like, thanks, That's really helpful, Dante. Thank you for that. And he also makes fun of his costume, being like, did you have any input on this? Because, like, the glasses, it looks like you're trying too hard. And he's like, I don't know. I'm just doing what they tell me to do. I'm not doing all that much. And at this point, we see that Waller and his Agent Gunn, are watching him through the glasses. And he's like, he's already given up a secret identity to his brother. Get in there and stop him. And Gunn's like, yeah, no, totally, got it. So we see a thing, I think this was in Justice League of America 1, where there's a store owner who's screaming for help that he just got robbed. And mind you, it goes from day to night here, like instantaneously. So, But regardless, he chases down the guy who robbed the store owner. Turns out it's like an 8-year-old who stole some chocolate bars. And he's like, geez, okay, no, kid, keep the candy. I'll pay for it. This is embarrassing. So his brother's giving him a hard time for using his powers to take down an 8-year-old. And he's just like, I don't know. Maybe, I guess they see something in you that neither of us can see. But there's something at the very least. And then Agent Gunn steps up and he's like, hey, you just used your powers to take out an 8-year-old, and also you're telling your brother all your secrets. Could you maybe like not be a total embarrassment for like 5 seconds? And he's like, you have this huge power set that you barely can comprehend your ability to. Like, the Earth is under constant threat from aliens. And everyone else they got it. They know to keep their secret identity secret. Why don't you? And at that point, Cisco's like, hey, he's cool. He's not going to tell anybody. He's like, I'm not the one you need to convince of that. I have bosses, and they're your bosses too. So at that point, he straight up asks Agent Gunn, like, why does the JLA want me? And he's like, you have a power no one else does. Now go home. You're going to meet him tomorrow. So then we cut back to the alien, and we see him just walking down the streets. He's scaring everybody nearby. He's speaking in an alien tongue nobody can understand, but he sees these weapons and stuff like that on TV, and he seems to be very angry at Argus for some reason. So then we cut back to Cisco's home. He's doing his investigation on like people who might be in the JLA, hoping that he can figure out like who he's going to deal with. He thinks like, oh, maybe Hawkman will be there. I think Aquaman's busy on the main team, but and Dante's just throwing up like better names than Vibe. He's like, how about like Soundstorm or Metallo or something like that? And he's like, I think those are taken already. So at that point, their father walks in and is basically asking what they're doing. And Cisco finally gets the gripe of like, oh, right, don't tell people about my secret stuff. But as his dad is basically asking them how their day was and everything that's going on, like, hey, you guys, we're the only family we have. We need to be there for each other. Cisco starts getting a little migraine, meaning that he senses a breach nearby, which he's able to immediately trace down to a few blocks away where some cops are opening fire on the breacher. And he just uses some telekinetic ability, waves it away. It's no big deal. And then he teleports right behind the cops, to which when Argus and Cisco get there, they see one of the cops has been knocked out, but the other one's missing. And Cisco uses his powers to see that the alien has turned invisible, and he's up on the side of the wall nearby. So Agent Gunn tells him, like, okay, go, deal with it. And he's like, I can't fly. He's up there. And he's like, you have no idea what you can do. Give it a shot. And he's like, all right, here's a different idea. And he uses his powers to basically break a street lamp so that he can use it to climb his way up onto the roof. And when he gets up there, he sees the alien. The alien goes to attack him. Cisco uses his light powers to blind the alien for a second. He's like, all right, stay down or I'm gonna really mess you up. And the alien just surrenders. He's like, oh no, I'm done. And he takes off his mask and we see that he's like a sad looking alien. And he pulls out a scroll in a foreign language that he can't read, passes it over to Vibe. And then Agent Gunn comes up out of nowhere and shoots the alien, seemingly to kill. And Vibe's like, no, he was peaceful. He was surrendering. Why'd you shoot him? And he's just like, oh, there's no such thing as a peaceful alien. He was going to shoot people, or he was going to attack people. So Gunn takes the scroll and he picks it up. He's like, oh, I can read this. This is a declaration of war. You just saved the world, kid. And he's like, oh, cool. Awesome. Fantastic. So then we cut back over to the circus, which is where all those people are held by Amanda Waller. And she is the scroll now. And it turns out the scroll is actually written for one of the people who is held here. And it's a letter basically saying, hey, we would like you to come home. We want you to, take up your place as rightful heir of our realm. And turns out that it was written for a prisoner named Gypsy, who we saw last issue. And Waller's like, here's what you're going to do. You're going to write a letter back. You're going to say you're fine, but you're not coming back home. And you're not going to mention anything about this. And Gypsy's like, why should I? And he's like, well, I can make your time here a hell of a lot worse. And Gypsy's pissed off about it, saying like, oh, take me out of here. I want out, whatever. And the man's like, nope, sorry. You're a threat to our dimensional fabric of reality or whatever. So then we cut to inside the press conference room where Vibe's going to meet the rest of the JLA. And he's on the phone with his brother. And this is actually like line for line exactly what was in Justice League of America number 2. And basically saying like, yeah, I got here 30 minutes early. I just hoping that the team likes me. But I'd be anything but be a sucky Justice Leaguer. So we see the press conference they have to give with the president. And he like has a little snicker with Stargirl saying like, "Oh, if only my brother could see me now." And Trevor's like, "Don't talk when you're in line, dude. Come on, man, act like an adult." And he hops on the line with Waller and basically says like, "This guy, are you sure about this kid? He's not seemed like he's superhero material yet." And Waller's like, "Yeah, he's not. He's supposed to be like the guy who deals with the Flash. He's clearly not on Flash's level yet. How about we put him up against something a little less experienced?" And we see an image of Kid Flash from Teen Titans, and I guess that's what we're gonna put Vibe up against for right now. It's an okay issue. It's weird to me that this is happening coinciding like issue for issue with JLA number or JLA in general, because this is exactly what was happening in this week's issue of JLA as well. So overall, it's a fine enough thing. We are building up more that this is more the fact of a naive superhero, someone who's being pointed by a government entity who he thinks is in the right, but obviously is doing some shady crap in the background. So I like that. I think it's an interesting idea for a book. Art-wise, okay, not the best. Writing, it has its moments, but in general, it's weird that it is the exact lines used in the other book, which makes sense because I'm sure that's what Jeff Johns wrote, but like there's no deviation. So like 4 or 5 pages from this book I already read prior to reading this issue. So I'm going to give this one a 6.5. It's okay, not great. Just kind of an average book. It still feels like it's feeling out its footing, and I don't think it's quite figured out what it wants to be yet. And hopefully you can get there before it gets canceled, because Lord knows this book did not last very long. Wonder Woman number 18, written by Brian Azzarello, art by Goran Sudzuka, Cliff Chiang, Tony Atkins, and Dan Green. Why are there so many artists? I cannot begin to fathom. So last issue, War and Wonder Woman made their way into Demeter's realm, and they were blocked by Hermes, who's like, "Oh, I'm gonna kill you." So this issue picks up, Hermes has got a sword to Wonder Woman. It's like, I had so much time to think about what I was going to say, but like all I can think of now is, I'm sorry. But now that I see you're working with War, I'm not. So at that point, Wonder Woman gets her little swords that she got from Hephaestus, I think. I always blank on his name. But regardless, pulls out her magic swords, starts sword fighting with Hermes, and is like, oh, okay, it seems like all of my family has turned against me, but hey, whatever, so is it. And basically Wonder Woman says, I don't want to fight you, and he asks, what do you want? Oh, I want the baby. And Hermes just gives her a look and is like, I'm going to have to fight you, aren't I? So they continue fighting. Then we see basically Wonder Woman has the skills needed to take on Hermes, but she doesn't have the speed. Hermes is literally the fastest there is, so there's not much that she can do to overtake that. And apparently Zola's baby and its well-being was charged to Hermes, and Wonder Woman wonders why he even asked for her help, and it's like, oh, well, I needed your help in order to get the baby, but now that's done, so whatever. So at that point, there's a boom as Hermes is about to land a blow on Wonder Woman, and Orion swoops in and just picks her up and flies her away. And it turns out that Orion's speed is able to at least rival Hermes. And Wonder Woman asks, like, hey, how did you even find me? Like, this is a god's realm. How'd you get here? And it's like, oh, remember when I slapped your ass the other issue? That was to get your DNA. You think I actually just slapped your ass for no reason? That'd be weird. So Hermes is outpacing Wonder Woman. Orion is outpacing Hermes, and Wonder Woman is basically breaking it down like, look, we're only here for one reason. We got to get the baby, and we have to take out Hermes to do that. And Orion's like, okay, well, I was really only sent here to destroy the baby, but I really don't want to destroy a baby, so we'll figure it out. And so Wonder Woman basically tells Orion on the count of 3, slam on the brakes. And he's like, you want him to catch us? I was like, no, just try it. So slams on the brakes, and then Wonder Woman uses her sword to cut the wings off of Hermes' heels and basically cripple him. At this point, we see War has delved deeper into Demeter's realm, into the point of her home, and they basically talk to each other just as brother and sister, more or less. And Demeter's like, I would pity you if you weren't such a dick all the time. And War's like, I don't think you quite understand how bored I am with existence. Like, I have lived on the edge of life and death for so long that I'm bored of it. And that's why I'm doing this now, because war has just become boring to me. And he goes up to Demeter and rips open her stomach, and that's where she was hiding Zola's baby. And so he just picks it up and takes it away. Meanwhile, intercut with all of this, and it's over the course of the whole issue, but I'll just say it now. The Firstborn is fighting against Poseidon, and Poseidon ends up telling him, like, hey, your father sent you to the center of the earth to test you. I would have seen you dead, but he wanted to see what you could do. But don't worry, we won't make that mistake again. And Poseidon just straight up swallows the Firstborn. Meanwhile, that scientist lady who was with him has just been treading water this whole time. And as a helicopter is about to arrive to pick her up, Poseidon just swallows her too. So we'll see where that turns out. Anyway, back to the Wonder Woman story. Wonder Woman and Orion make their way to Demeter, and she's like, look, I only have respect for you. You're a mother, your life. I don't have any ill will. But she turns around and shows that she's been ripped open by war. And Wonder Woman immediately is like, oh God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen. She's like, Wonder Woman, you're okay. Like, war hates you because you are so empathetic. You care about others so much more than yourself. He hates you more than he hates himself. But either way, I let him take the baby. And Demeter just breaks down. It's like, look, it's my nature. We all have our natures here. And mine is just nature. I just let what's going to happen, happen. That's who I am. So Orion takes Wonder Woman back to the real world, to her apartment complex, and she's just so pissed off that she trusted War now that War has the baby. And Orion's trying to calm her down, like, hey, we're going to find him. This isn't done yet. Like, yeah, you trusted him, but only as a risk you needed him to get to the baby. And yeah, it sucks what he did, but we'll get through it. We'll figure it out, and we'll find them. And Wonder Woman's like, thank you, Orion, I need to hear that. And he's like, you're kind of hot when you're angry. And she's like, all right, well, thanks for ruining it. So they go down to her apartment, and basically the baby's there. War just went back and gave the baby to Zola. And Wonder Woman's like, what? War, why? What? And he basically is just like, you owe me. So Lennox is like, hey, I'm wrong about War. I guess this all worked out in the end. And Zola offers Wonder Woman to hold the baby, and its little blanket it was swallowed in falls off, and they see that the baby is a boy. And Orion's like, oh, thank God. It's going to be so much easier to kill a boy than it is a girl. And everyone's like, what? Dude, read the room. And Orion's like, you guys are sexist. And that's where it leaves off, with Orion claiming everyone else is sexist. I like it. I think it's a nice little issue. I have to assume this isn't the end of War's story. It feels like we're still kind of in the middle of his bigger plan here. But this does feel like the capper to the previous 18 issues. This feels like, okay, we started with Zola and the baby and all that, and we have gotten her back the baby. And, I mean, they're literally posing for a group photo here at the end. Everyone involved is just on the couch, smiling and, like, chuckling at each other. If it was a sitcom, this is where the credits would roll. But I feel like there's more to the war story. And because of that, this feels like not an ending, not like it has to be a satisfying ending, but more that it is just the end of Act 1, or maybe Act 2, I guess would be a more fair statement. Overall, I give this one I'm going to give it a 7.5. And I think a lot of that is, obviously the Firstborn stuff still has to fall out. And I did downplay it, but it was scattered throughout this issue, like split into like 4 different parts. I think it didn't need that much time for basically Firstborn gets swallowed and then so does the other lady. But hey, they wanted to do it that way, so whatever. I'm much more interested in the war and the sort of like Game of Thrones God stuff going on. I'm really wanting to see how that all shakes out. So overall, like I said, this is, I think I may have already said an 8, but I'll say it again, an 8. I'm looking forward to where it goes from here. Legion of Superheroes number 18, written by Paul Levitz, art by Keith Giffen. Last issue we discovered that all of the technology in the universe, more or less, is failing because of the Fatal Five. More so specifically, I believe a guy named Tharok, but don't hold me to it. So this issue picks up with the Legion headquarters and the surrounding area in Metropolis. Basically, all of the people are just storming the Legion base because they all think that this is because of them. And we have Dragon Flame or whatever and some other lady, and they're basically like, everyone, calm down. This is not our fault, but we are looking into it and we will get it fixed as soon as we can. Everyone's like, you guys suck. And it's like, reasonable opinion, but we don't suck. That's no. And it turns out that some of these, it seems like it's more of an energy source than it is like the technology itself is failing. But this one guy has some batteries for some cameras, and he's like, oh, Legion, what would you like to say in front of the cameras? And everyone's like, dude, are you like live streaming right now? I was like, I mean, I'm recording it. That's kind of the same. And we see that the one lady, again, I forget her name, has wind powers and just kind of blows the guy away. And then Dragonwing is like, oh, can I burn him too? And some rocks are about to fall on Dragonwing, and she pushes them away too. And it's just like, okay, look, our headquarters are collapsing. We'll do what we can from here. So then we see Mon-El is basically keeping this satellite above Earth still flying, so that way it's not, gonna kill everybody beneath. And what's his name? Cosmic Lad, I think, is basically trying to figure out what's going on. And he's hoping that Ayla, the Lightning Lass, can use her powers to get the ship going again. And they say, like, this is the worst catastrophe the Legion's faced since the Great Darkness. And one of them's like, nah, this is even worse than the Great Darkness. So then we cut back to that planet of Rimbor, where Chameleon Lad and the other guys, like, I will give it credit that in the actual issue itself, when I read it digitally and in the single issues, it has the names of all the Legionnaires. Why they have removed it from the trades, I will never know. But regardless, they're like, okay, we need to work out a plan here. We need to figure out what we can do. I mean, what could even be going on in the rest of the universe right now? And what's her name? The witch lady, whatever her name is, she's like, look, I can open up a portal to go back to my home world, and that way that'll get us off of this rock at least. So we could use that. And then we cut back to Legion headquarters again, and basically Brainiac 5 is trying to do anything that doesn't involve that particular energy source in order to get Legion headquarters back up and running and get a working spaceship. It ain't going well. He's very frustrated. Meanwhile, the other Legionnaires get the computers back up and running, like to the internet, and they're able to see these videos that people are taking of all over the universe. Just worlds are falling apart, and they're like, oh God, this is horrible. What are we supposed to do here? And Brainiac's like, well, we're not going to do anything if somebody can't get me some goddamn batteries. So at that point, the place is collapsing, and Brainiac manages to put it together like, this is Tharok. Like, 99% chance this is Tharok. We think this is the Fatal Five. No matter what, we have to find them before they destroy everything. So then we go back to the Promethean Giants, where Phantom Girl and the other people are trapped. And one of the giants woke up and started moving. Once it's done moving, they feel like, oh, geez, this was an earthquake. Oh, yeah. By the way, last issue, Sunboy or whatever got eaten by cannibals. Maybe we should have a funeral for him. And Phantom Girl's like, I have been leader for like 2 days, and this might be the end of the world, if not universe. Like, they're going to string me up. And it's like, look, we've had plenty of bad things before. We're not going to string you up. We're going to get through this, and we'll figure out what to do. Let's go over to the village and see if we can actually manage to get anything from them. And at that point, when they make it over to the village, the Promethean Giant's finger just starts like scraping along it and seeming like it's going to destroy them. So then back at Legion headquarters, everything's finally falling apart. Things are crashing down around them. Brainiac's like, I got the bones of it together. I'll finish the rest of it while we're in flight. Let's get out of here. And so they make their way over there. what's his name, Starboy or whatever, and Dreamer Girl, Stargirl, I don't know. They seemingly are about to get trapped under some rubble, but one of the other Legionnaires stops it and says, I've got the debris, get in the ship now. Dreamer gets in there, but then Starboy, he's like, hey, yeah, I can't move as fast with my legs, and all of a sudden he's crushed by rubble. And Dreamer's like, oh, excuse me? That was my husband and/or boyfriend. What? And Brainiac's like, no time, he can dig himself out. And so they have to fly away, leaving behind Thom in the rubble. And then we cut back to the Giant again, and we see that him destroying this village and scratching at himself is actually being controlled by Tharok. He's the one behind it. Because, yeah, we knew he was. We saw it last issue. Okay, I can feel the stakes in this. I'm good with, this feels like a true Legion level, like everything is going to hell across the universe and they have to find a way to solve it. This is the first time I felt this in this entire book. I appreciate that. I really do. I also appreciate that it seems like they are killing off Legionnaires like for good, which is impressive. I'm all for actual stakes here. My only critique is in the way that it's presented. Reading it in trade, there's no reason to have taken away their name balloons. For God's sakes, I don't remember any of these assholes. It's so frustrating. Either way, it's a fine issue. I think the art is really because Keith Giffen's got a very like Jack Kirby-esque style, and it's just not like what I'm up for. I'm not a huge fan of it. Makes it a little bit hard to tell apart to different characters. So all in all, I got to give this one, I'll give it a 6. It's good. It's fine. It does feel like it's kind of meandering a little bit and just stalling out until we can get to a later issue. But it at least has big stakes. And that's more than I felt for most of this book. So thumbs up for that. Sword of Sorcery number 6, written by Christy Marx, art by Aaron Lopresti. Last issue, we had the head of House Turquoise killed, and the power, not having an heir, moved into some random street rat. And this issue picks up exactly in that spot where the street rat has been experimenting with his powers and how he's able to change his form at will, but it consumes the turquoise that he has around his neck, so he's forced to go out and find some more. And he's like, oh, and I know where to find the best quality turquoise. And he looks to the royal palace. So meanwhile, within the royal palace, Lady Graciole, who's still recovering from her injuries after last issue, is teaching Amaya how to use her amethyst powers to imbue other crystals with magic. That's one of their main things that they can do with amethyst. And so she makes one of the crystals emit light, and that's why their house is known as the Lightbringer House, because they are able to do that. And it's like, all right, so we can make other crystals of other houses be able to receive their house's ability as well. That's why we're able to make healing rubies and citrines for record history and stuff like that. And so she's like, all right, now I'm going to show you how to do portal crystals. And immediately when the guard steps up and is like, nope, you need bed rest, and just picks her up and lays her down in bed. And so Amaya goes off with Ingvi basically to just learn a little bit more about stuff through reading. And it turns out Ingvi has a photographic memory, and she's like, okay, well, if you have photographic memory, maybe you'll know this. House Onyx, Lady Akikra, said something about the protocols can't be breached. What does that mean? And Ingvi explains that House Onyx is able to basically... They're able to stop the powers of other people's bloodlines, and that allows them to be, very useful in... They could, take over the entire world and whatnot, but in doing so, the other houses would kill House Onyx as well. So in order for them to coexist, they made an agreement where House Onyx will not attack anybody in the 5 cardinal houses, but in exchange, they get a regular tribute payment. And so that's why it was against the rules for House Onyx to attack the Amethyst House. Anyway, we cut back to Earth, and Constantine is looking into a magic mirror, basically saying, mirror, mirror, show me where our big bad supernatural threat is. And then Eclipso shows up in the mirror and is like, hey, what do you want? And he's like, hey, I got a deal for you, Eclipso. I'm offering you a one-way ticket to Nala, a.k.a. Gemworld. And he's like, all right, I'm interested. Where do you want to meet? So then we cut back to Turquoise, where Amethyst is putting the big Amaya is putting the big crystal she was working with back in there. And she starts talking to the guy, like the caretaker inside, and just like, oh, yes, your clothes are the finest silk, and I cannot compare these gems to the beauty in your eyes. And she puts a hand on him, and because of their power thing, it ends up transforming him. Turns out this is the street rat, and he is like, okay, hi, yes, I am the new Lord of Turquoise, but I'm just Preet. I'm a thief, and I don't really want to be the Lord of Turquoise, so I'm just going to take this turquoise and bail on out. And as he's walking out, Amaya grabs him with her silk scarf. And he manages to be like, well, two can play that game. And he pulls her down on top of him, just be like, so, I can get used to this. And so Amaya's like, no, it's just, look, just have a conversation with my family. You are destined to be the person in charge of the House of Turquoise. So isn't that worth hearing out? So then we cut back to Earth. Constantine is meeting up with Eclipso out in Death Valley. And he basically has set up a dead man switch for Eclipso, saying, like, if you try to possess me or do anything with my body, I'm going to destroy this crystal and blow you up inside of me. So don't do that. And Eclipso's like, fair, fine, whatever. What do you want? He's like, okay, I don't like the fact that you're on Earth, so I'm going to send you off to Gemworld, and you can do whatever there. I don't care. But, like, you are not to be bothered here. And it's like, okay, well, why would they let me into Gemworld? Like, why, like, that doesn't, they're just going to not open up the portal. And it's like, here's the thing, they're not going to have a choice. They're going to open up the portal, and you are going to pretend to be cool until you get through the portal. Got it? He's like, all right, cool, can do. So he transforms into a human form, and then we cut back to Graciel hearing about Preet, and Amaya's like, okay, so can we get him on, like, he can lead House Turquoise now. And it's like, well, there's a council and stuff like that, and they're probably not going to like a thief being in charge. And Preet's like, see, told ya, I'm not going to be in charge. I'm going back out there. So long. And Graciel's like, now hold on. I said it would be difficult, but it ain't going to be impossible. And Turquoise needs somebody who's been out on the street for a while because they're kind of a little bit uppity, And he's like, yeah, I know. I was like, cool, you agree? You should be in charge. And he's like, okay, but, like, there are assassins who would kill me. I really don't want to be a part of all that. And Amaya's like, you got to do it, man. But before they can continue, portal opens up, and Amaya's like, crap, this must be Constantine. Look, I'm just going to be like 5 seconds. We're going to pop in there, tell him I can't right now, and then come back. And Graciel's like, all right, fine, whatever. So she pops through the portal, and Constantine and Eclipso sell a thing of this being Alex Montez, who's going to be the first Earth to Gemworld ambassador. And he's like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess that'd be cool. So Amaya leads him through the portal. Constantine on the other side blows up the portal crystal. When he does so, Amaya's father's spirit is released and goes through a portal of his own. And he's like, thank you for freeing me. I must see to my daughter. And Constantine's like, okay. So as Alex Montez and Amaya get through the portal, Alex transforms back into Eclipso and is like, it begins. So long, everybody. And it turns out, because of his tattoos, he's a member of House Onyx. But he just immediately blasts them and then makes his way to House Citrine, where he goes to the leader of the house and, like, grabs her by the neck, says, when is the next eclipse? She's like, not for a couple of months. Why? Who are you? And he's like, I am Lord Kala, a.k.a. Eclipso. I am Lord of the Black Diamond. And she's like, that's impossible. You were gone for 1,000 years. And it's like, well, I'm back. And he tries enslaving her with the Black Diamond. And it's like, oh, you can't enslave those who have a blood power. And you're an abomination. He's like, all right, well, if I can't enslave you, I'm going to kill you. So he snaps her neck and then walks away. So when everyone else in the main throne room is waking up, they're like, okay, that clearly is bad news. We need to go deal with that right now. Graciel, do you have anything that we can work with? And it's like, he's House Onyx and he has some powers. That's all I got. But then all of a sudden, Ingvi is hit with a power surge and she starts screaming out in pain. And it turns out she was next heir in line to the throne. This means her mother is dead and she's getting the power of House Citrine. It's a Black Diamond probability book. If you've been paying attention, you know what that means. But, yep, the Black Diamond is back. Eclipso is now in Gemworld, and I think that's just going to be what wraps this up to the end, because this only has 2 more issues. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this book. I'm sad to see it go so soon, but I do think Eclipso, being a gem himself, is a interesting way to end it. I think it's solid. As much as I would have liked it to be more of a Game of Thrones sort of houses against houses, it seems like we're going more the White Walker route, where it's just going to be a outward force that's pushing down upon them. So I'm going to give this issue a 7.5. I did really enjoy it. That's my own personal taste, at least. Writing wise, it's informative without being too boring. I enjoy the way they're expositing like the different houses and how they all work together. And yeah, no, it's just a good book. I really do like it. I look forward to seeing how it's going to manage to wrap up this Eclipso plot. So stay tuned. And that's it. That's all the comics that came out from DC Comics this March 20th, 2013. And I really wish that when I started this show, I made it more of an open format, that I would feel comfortable going longer than 2 hours, so I didn't have to rush through it as much. But I didn't. I made it so an hour and 45 minutes is about as long as I can hold your attention. And even then, I can see the audience retention. I see you skipping around. I see you jumping to only the comics you're interested in. You don't know what you're missing. You didn't even see little jokes I hid in Human Bomb number 4. Go back and check. It's hilarious. Speaking of comics, though, why don't I tell you what's coming out next week? Next week, we have 13 issues, including the number 18 issues of Batman the Dark Knight, Superman, Red Lanterns, Aquaman, The Flash, The Fury of Firestorm, The Savage Hawkman, All-Star Western, Teen Titans, iVampire, and Justice League Dark. Additionally, we have the number 9 issue of Batman Incorporated and the number 6 issue of Talon. But hey, that's going to do it for me in terms of places that you can share your opinion. We have a Twitter, we have a Discord, we have a Patreon, we have a subreddit, we have a dog. No, we don't. That's a lie. We have a cat. But all those can be found, except for the cat, in the description beneath. Be sure to check it out. That's going to do it for me. Thank you very much for watching, listening, however it is you consume this podcast. Be sure to tune into the next episode. It is always appreciated. And make sure to always remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.